The wall of silence has now been broken, and victims are coming forward. Our team has had at this point more than 3,285 individuals contact us with people claiming to have been victimized by Sean Combs.
The atmosphere inside the courtroom was almost unbearable. It was a kind of silence where even the smallest movement seemed to carry enormous weight. A chair shifting, a page turning, a quiet whisper between attorneys. Everything felt amplified. For weeks, the case had captured the attention of millions, with every new development bringing another wave of headlines, speculation, and controversy. But what happened next would push the tension inside that courtroom to an...
He plans to file a wave of lawsuits on behalf of 120 alleged sexual assault victims of Sean Combs. He wasn't bluffing. And as he has said, he's not only going after Combs, but corporate entities too. And we reported to you how last week he filed 6 lawsuits, and now he has just filed a bunch more. I'll give you an example. We have one lawsuit now where a woman who claims she was drugged and raped by Combs during a Las Vegas event back in 2014. We have other claims that are more recent, by the way. These allegations are all from 2022. A businessman who claims that Combs sexually assaulted him during a Ciroc party back in 2022. A woman who claims she was drugged and raped by Combs at a house party in Manhattan back in 2022. Another man who claims he was drugged and repeatedly sexually assaulted by Combs and others, including an unnamed celebrity. This at an award show after party in LA back in 2022. But the one we want to focus on right now is a very, very disturbing claim. As if all of these aren't disturbing, but this one is especially heinous, because I think the best way to describe this is the very first paragraph of this new lawsuit. It reads, in the complaint, defendant Combs drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl at a house party. Many others were present but did nothing to stop it. Some participated in it. Combs has been allowed for years to conduct himself in this manner without any consequences. He believes he is above the law. He is not. Yeah. Now again, I've said this before, while Combs is currently facing federal criminal charges of racketeering and sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution, none of those criminal charges are related to minors. However, a number of these lawsuits, including from Tony Busby, they focused on the alleged abuse of underage people. And it makes you wonder if Combs will be hit with a superseding indictment. That means when you go back to the grand jury for additional or revised charges, will Combs be hit with a superseding indictment that involves minors? Have to ask the question in light of these allegations. You have to wonder if any of the people who have sued Combs, are they cooperating with the government? You have to wonder if the government really has all the evidence they need to charge him with respect to minors, but maybe they're not doing so yet. Maybe they're keeping it in their back pocket for now. Maybe to push Combs to take a plea. Maybe they're only now getting this information and are authenticating it to bring these claims, to bring new charges. We don't know if their case will ever be about minors. I will tell you one thing. If minors come into the mix, it makes Sean Combs' defense to the federal criminal charges he's facing much more difficult. His defense right now is everything was consensual. When you're dealing with minors, that defense doesn't work anymore. And by the way, as we're talking about high-profile people, as we're talking about unnamed celebrities in these lawsuits, including the one I'm about to get into, remember what Tony Busby told TMZ. He said that a number of high-profile people have even come to him already to settle their claims so they are not named in these lawsuits. It makes you wonder if the people that he mentions in these lawsuits are people who've already settled their claims, so they're not named as defendants, they're not identified. I mean, if you think about it, that would be a PR and legal nightmare if they're named in these lawsuits. Even though these are just allegations, the fact that they would be tied to Sean Combs right now, who's toxic, they might be avoiding that. So that might be one reason why we see unnamed celebrity 1, unnamed celebrity 2. Anyway, we don't know exactly what's happening, but what we do know is that these allegations are a disturbing pattern.
Powerful names in the music industry under an extraordinary level of scrutiny. Witnesses have come forward, allegations have been discussed, relationships have been examined, and details that once seemed impossible to imagine being discussed publicly have become part of a massive legal battle. Yet the possibility of family members becoming involved added an entirely different emotional dimension to the story. When the courtroom doors opened, attention immediately shifted toward the people entering the room. Reporters watched closely. Cameras turned. Spectators became noticeably quieter. Everyone understood that this was no ordinary moment. If members of Diddy's own family were prepared to speak publicly about their experiences, the emotional consequences could be enormous. The room seemed to hold its breath as the proceedings continued. This was no longer simply about celebrity, wealth, or reputation. It was about deeply personal relationships and the consequences of allegations that had already changed the public conversation.
Break down this lawsuit now. So this lawsuit is filed by Jane Doe. She's unnamed. And this was filed in federal court in the Southern District of New York. That is the same jurisdiction where Combs is being federally prosecuted. And in many ways, the lawsuit mirrors the allegations in the indictment. For example, the complaint reads, quote, "For decades, Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Diddy, PD, Love, abused, molested, raped, assaulted, threatened, and coerced women, minors, and others for sexual gratification to assert dominance and to conceal his abhorrent conduct. He accomplished these acts by and through a criminal enterprise built on his success as a rapper, record producer, and record executive." Again, very similar to the language that was used in the indictment to describe the racketeering conspiracy charge that he faces, that he allegedly operated and controlled this criminal enterprise to carry out various crimes like sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping. Those terms are actually both in this complaint and in the indictment. And I'm going to get into the other defendants who are being sued in this lawsuit besides Combs in a second, but I do want to call out a unique aspect to this lawsuit. And in fact, it's a unique aspect not just to this suit, but the other Tony Buzbee lawsuits. They almost use the same beginning language, the same preface, talking about Sean Combs' illegal empire, talking about the, quote, pervasive history of sexual assault and violence. So it's not even directly addressing the individual plaintiff's claims yet. It's kind of setting the stage to understand who the defendant is, the power that he wielded, the alleged danger and threat that he is, maybe as a way to explain why these defendants did not come forward initially with their claims. For example, this lawsuit reads, "Combs' recurrent and pervasive physical abuse took place for multiple decades. His tendencies of violence and sexual assault were well known amongst his colleagues, employees, agents, and businesses. On numerous occasions from at least in or about 1996 and continuing for years, Combs assaulted women and men by striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. Combs also assaulted children both physically and sexually. In 1996, Combs was found guilty of criminal mischief for threatening a photographer from the New York Post with a gun. In 1999, he was arrested and charged with second-degree assault and criminal mischief in connection with assaulting a record executive." By the way, I just have to call something out. Even besides those last legal cases that I just mentioned in this quote, the sexual assault allegations, the sex trafficking allegations, all of this are just allegations. He hasn't been found guilty of anything yet. He hasn't been found liable with respect to any of this yet. So it is interesting that Tony Buzbee is using this language to kind of build up his case, even though, again, to be clear, Sean Combs hasn't been found guilty and hasn't been found liable with respect to any of this, and he's been denying this anyway. And to couple that, the lawsuit also lays out all of the civil suits from the past year, from Cassandra Ventura to Joy Dickerson Neal to Lisa Gardner to then Combs' arrest to his indictment, again, setting the stage. But it is also done for another reason. In the complaint, it reads, "Combs' long history of violence against women unequivocally establishes that his actions are motivated by gender, both men and women. Combs has a profound contempt for women and a desire to dominate both minors and other men. His conduct shows a long-standing practice of denigrating, defeating, and attempting to humiliate men, women, and children.
As the proceedings moved forward, the atmosphere became increasingly uncomfortable. The allegations being discussed were far removed from the glamorous public image associated with Diddy's decades-long career. Instead, the courtroom was confronted with claims involving control, manipulation, fear, and deeply troubling personal experiences. Jurors listened carefully, occasionally looking down at their notes as attorneys presented their arguments, and witnesses discussed events from the past. Prosecutors remained focused, while the defense continued challenging the allegations and the evidence being presented. And then came the most emotionally charged part of proceedings. Attention turned toward Diddy himself. Seated at the defense table, he appeared increasingly serious as the accusations and testimony unfolded. Every expression, every movement, and every reaction was being closely watched by reporters and spectators inside the courtroom. For someone who had spent decades projecting confidence and control, the
The family of Sean Diddy Combs celebrating after learning his long-awaited fate in court. The family staying stoic as they entered Diddy's courthouse July 2nd before departing with smiles and waves after hearing the media mogul's partial victory, not guilty on 3 out of the 5 counts, covering charges for racketeering and sex trafficking. Per NBC News reporters inside the courtroom, Diddy's loved ones were seen celebrating the results of his now winding down legal saga. The Bad Boy Records founder is facing 2 convictions, both surrounding prostitution offenses. NBC News noting Diddy's son Christian King Combs said his dad was feeling great about the verdicts, with Diddy reportedly telling his gathered family, "Thank you. Love you." Chance Combs spotted seemingly wiping away tears alongside her grandma, who gave a thumbs up to the media frenzy outside the Manhattan courthouse, following weeks of putting up a united front for Diddy, who maintained his innocence across.
Sean Diddy Combs is missing out on major moments in his kids' lives. As the music mogul's federal trial continues in New York, Combs' 18-year-old twin daughters Delilah and Jessie enjoy their senior prom in Los Angeles. The pair arrive fashionably late to the Harbor House in downtown LA May 17th. The girls, famously known for always wearing coordinating outfits, both don strapless sparkly red gowns and matching rose corsages as they smile and pose for pics on their big night. This outing for Delilah and Jessie come after they've been in NYC along with several of their siblings supporting their dad in the courtroom amid his ongoing trial. Combs has 7 children total, 30-year-old son Justin with ex-Misa Hilton, as well as 32-year-old adopted son Quincy, 27-year-old son Christian, and daughters Delilah and Jessie with Kim Porter, 18-year-old daughter Chance with ex-Sarah Chapman, and lastly, 2-year-old daughter Love with Dana Tran. The rapper, who's currently being held without bail at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, is charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Combs has pleaded not guilty to the charges, but faces up to life in prison if
Christian, Jessie, Delilah Combs, they wrote in a joint statement on Instagram, "We have seen so many hurtful and false rumors circulating about our parents Kim Porter and Sean Combs' relationship, as well as about our mom's tragic passing, that we feel the need to speak out. Claims that our mom wrote a book are simply untrue. She did not. And anyone claiming to have a manuscript is misrepresenting themselves." And by the way, even Combs authorized his attorney Erica Wolf to release a statement on his behalf regarding the new book, stating, "The Kim Porter memoir is fake. It is also offensive, a shameless attempt to profit from tragedy. Chris Todd has no respect for Miss Porter or her family, who deserve better. Unlike the fabrications in his sickening memoir, it is an established fact that Miss Porter died of natural causes. May she rest in peace." And Al B. Shore reportedly sent a cease and desist letter to Amazon as well. And Chris Todd, by the way, he's the author. And when we say memoir, we have to be clear here. There's no information verifying that Porter actually authored these writings or authorized a book to be written by her or anybody else at any point. And even the author really couldn't confirm whether...
The tension continued building as the courtroom heard more testimony and arguments. At certain moments, the emotional weight of the proceedings became almost impossible to hide. Attorneys attempted to maintain control of the situation, while the judge repeatedly reminded everyone that courtroom procedure had to remain the priority. Outside the courtroom, however, the story was already taking on a life of its own. Every reaction was being analyzed, every headline was spreading across social media, and every new detail was being discussed by millions of people who had followed the case from the beginning. The public image of an enormously successful music mogul was now being examined against a much darker set of allegations. The contrast was impossible to miss. Yet, the proceedings were far from over. The defense continued to challenge the prosecution's narrative, while prosecutors continued presenting their version of events. And with every new...
And also, he was like, wait a minute, I got to do damage control for my brand. And so he's like, all right, let me leap into action and settle this for, and I'm sure it was for an exorbitant amount, because he did not want all of these other folks to come forward. He did not want everyone knowing his very violent and disgusting proclivities. And, he basically was just trying to do damage control, but it was too late.
I mean, you mentioned there that he was hoping to not have others come forward, but it's interesting that several more people have come forward. There's 4 additional lawsuits, 2 Cassies, and several of them mention Cassie by name and say, hey, because she came forward and told us about these allegations, we felt comfortable doing the same thing. So did it really backfire for Diddy then?
I think it did, because if this had been settled without any kind of public involvement, any kind of media coverage, these other people may never have come forward. So by, kind of calling her bluff and saying, oh yeah, there's no way you're going to file this, he did himself a whole lot of damage. But I'm glad, because at least now the truth is going to come out and everyone will know who this person is. And now, of course, that kicked everything into high gear in terms of law enforcement involvement in investigations. So as much as this whole thing is sad and sordid, I'm glad that it's coming out so that more survivors can get the closure that they need and that he can be brought to justice for the crimes he's perpetrated on others.
Among those other lawsuits, another filed under the New York Survivors Act by Joy Dickerson Neal. Her allegations date back to 1991 when she was a student at Syracuse University. Joy says Diddy intentionally drugged her, resulting in her being in a physical state where she could not independently stand or walk. Joy also alleges she's a victim of revenge porn because Diddy allegedly recorded the rape and passed around that videotape. According to her suit, Joy demands a jury trial, as does Liza Gardner, who also says Diddy raped her in New York in the 90s. According to her civil suit, Liza and her friend met Diddy at a party and later went with him to an after party where she, quote, was offered more drinks and coerced into having sex with Combs. Liza says Diddy and another man raped her and her friend. Later on, she says Diddy choked her to the point that she lost consciousness. While Jane Doe doesn't list her name in the lawsuit, she does list multiple photos of herself and Diddy. Her allegations date back to 2003 when she was just 17 years old and in 11th grade. Her lawsuit states at this time Diddy was twice her age and one of the most well-known and influential music artists of all time. Jane Doe alleges Diddy flew her from Michigan to New York on a private plane and raped her in a recording studio. All of this leads us back to Lil Rod's 74-page lawsuit that was filed back in February, detailing a laundry list of wild accusations. Melba says all this parallels a trajectory we've seen before.
Oh, it absolutely is a fall from grace. I have no question in my mind that this is going to be the end of Diddy as we know him, right? And the next chapter is going to be him incarcerated, much like R. Kelly. And which is, of course, sad, tragic, and horrible, not only for him, but more importantly for the survivors who have gone public.
What made the situation so powerful wasn't simply the celebrity involved. It was the personal nature of the allegations and the number of people whose lives had become connected to the case. For years, Diddy had been associated with success, music, business, luxury, and an unmistakable public persona. But the courtroom was examining another side of that image through allegations and testimony that painted a dramatically different picture. These were not simply entertainment headlines anymore. They were claims being discussed within a serious legal proceeding where evidence, testimony, and credibility would ultimately matter far more than social media speculation. By this point, the courtroom had become almost completely silent between exchanges. Jurors continued taking notes. Attorneys watched one another carefully. Spectators waited for every new development. Outside, journalists were already preparing breaking news reports. Diddy trial developments continue. New testimony draws attention. Questions surrounding the case intensify. The story was spreading faster than anyone inside the courtroom could control.
Plaintiff how badly he wanted to be a star and what plaintiff would do to get to be one. Plaintiff responded, as might any 10-year-old child, that he would do anything. But at this point, one of the other people present allegedly gave this boy a soda, and after he drank it, he started to feel, quote, a little funny, He chalked it up to being maybe just so excited about his opportunity to rap for Sean Combs. But the plaintiff now believes that that soda was drugged with either GHB, known as the date rape drug, or ecstasy, or maybe even both. And that's interesting because, again, it's not Combs accused of giving a drug drink to an alleged victim. It's one of his employees or associates or friends, people who were involved in something that likely didn't appear to be above board and yet did it anyway. That person, although to be clear, is not named in the complaint. The complaint says, quote, after plaintiff consumed his soda and began feeling its effects, Combs told plaintiff to move closer to him, which plaintiff did. Combs then abruptly pushed plaintiff down and said words to the effect of, you have to do some stuff you don't want to do sometimes. Now, the next part of the complaint is just incredibly graphic. I'm not going to repeat it here, but essentially John Doe claims that Combs sexually assaulted him and then he lost consciousness. 10 years old. Quote, when plaintiff awoke, he began crying immediately. Plaintiff's pants were undone, and then he says that his private areas hurt badly. Combs was still present. Plaintiff cried that he wanted to go to his mom and dad. Combs replied that if plaintiff told anyone about what had happened, he would hurt plaintiff's mom and dad badly. Upon plaintiff's return, his parents immediately noticed that he was lethargic and acting differently. Although plaintiff ultimately told his parents what happened, plaintiff and his parents were terrified of the potential consequences of reporting the abuse. I want to focus on that point real quick because assuming these allegations are true, some might say, how could you not report this to the police? Your child gets attacked, I don't care who the person is, you go to the police. The other way of looking at it is, and this is a big theme that makes its way into these lawsuits and even the criminal case, is that Combs' power, his influence, his money, that scared people from coming forward. It was what led them to engage in these activities. The fear for their lives, their fear of reprisals. And look, that will ultimately be up to a judge or a jury to decide regarding the credibility of this John Doe if this should make its way to trial. But I just have to call that point out. According to the complaint, John Doe has had serious behavioral and emotional issues since this alleged 2005 incident. He reportedly suffers from depression, panics easily, battles night terrors, and he's bringing his claim against Combs as part of the New York City Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Act. We've told you about this before. It's a law referenced by Combs' accusers, more specifically the Tony Busby clients. And what this law does is it allows an alleged victim of gender-motivated violence, where it doesn't just have to be sexual assault, by the way, it can be any kind of violence, a look-back window to file a lawsuit even if their claims would otherwise be too old. Remember, this is in 2005. So now they have until February 2025 to file lawsuits. That's one of the reasons why you're seeing so many happen right now. According to the complaint, the requirement that the crime...
Across social media, reactions exploded almost immediately. Supporters and critics debated every new development, while millions of viewers try to separate verified courtroom information from rumors spreading online. Some people argued that the growing number of allegations painted an increasingly disturbing picture. Others insisted that accusations still had to be tested against evidence and due process. The debate became bigger than the courtroom itself. For Diddy, the consequences extended far beyond the legal proceedings. His reputation, business legacy, and carefully maintained public image were all facing unprecedented scrutiny. The image of the successful producer, businessman, performer, and father was now being discussed alongside allegations that had fundamentally changed the way many people viewed him. Inside the courtroom, the tension remained. Every witness statement mattered. Every piece of evidence could influence the direction of the case. Every argument from the prosecution or defense had the potential to change public perception. And outside, the cameras continued waiting.
Means there were witnesses to see what happened here. Once outside, plaintiff put her clothes back on and left the scene in the dark. Eventually, plaintiff reached a gas station. A female clerk noticed her distressed and allowed her to use the phone. Plaintiff called her father and admitted that she had lied about her whereabouts and asked him to pick her up. After the assault, plaintiff fell into a deep depression, which continues to affect every facet of her life. Okay, so clearly a very, very disturbing account, but it's on par with the other allegations that we've heard about Combs. Parties, alleged drugging, followed by sexual assault. Now, of course, as I said, these are allegations. Of course, Combs will have an opportunity to defend himself. And you know, from a legal point of view, I wonder if his attorneys could argue, well, she claims she was drugged and disoriented. How exactly does she remember all these details? How does she remember all of this? Is she able to remember all of this 24 years later? And of course, there are obviously a lot of counter responses to that put forward by Jane Doe, but the point is, Combs will probably assert a defense that this did not happen. Now, in the lawsuit, Jane Doe not only sues Sean Combs, but also several Combs businesses, their entities like Daddy's House Recording Studio Inc. and Bad Boy Entertainment. The lawsuit reads, Combs' business enterprise is central to the pervasive acts of sexual assault and abuse committed by him during the last decades. On the surface, each of these businesses served a legitimate purpose related to entertainment, music, and other subjects, but in reality, Combs, by and through himself and his agents, employees, and contractors, used these businesses to sexually assault, abuse, threaten, and coerce hundreds of individuals through sexual quid pro quo schemes, as well as to take advantage of individuals with impunity, thinking the victims would never have any recourse. By the way, that really goes to the racketeering charge that he's facing. And more specifically, and now tied to the allegations facing Jane Doe, who claims that she was assaulted at age 13, the lawsuit reads, the Combs business enabled and conspired with Combs to commit the crime of violence motivated by gender because Combs sexually assaulted plaintiff at a party related to or referencing Combs' business. On information and belief, Combs' businesses routinely committed sexual assault and gender-motivated violence as detailed in other civil lawsuits to further the business purpose of Combs' enterprise. Interesting. So that is a way that they're trying to hold these businesses liable. We've seen that before, that Combs was an employee or that he had control over these businesses to commit these acts. Now, she's suing for a number of things. She is suing for compensatory damages, physical injuries, psychological harm, emotional distress. These are damages to make you whole, to restore you to where you were before this happened. She is also suing for punitive damages, and that can be a lot. Those are damages to punish a defendant for really egregious conduct. She's suing for attorney's fees and costs, which actually is something you can recover for using the gender violence statute. And Jane Doe, to close this up, makes this point too. Plaintiff joins many other victims by filing this complaint in hopes their common voice makes it impossible for Combs to assault another person ever again. So there you go. That's kind of what this lawsuit is about. And I should tell you, in terms of a response,
because this case was no longer simply another celebrity controversy. It had become a defining moment in the public discussion surrounding power, influence, accountability, and the limits of fame. For decades, Diddy had built an enormous career around music, business, relationships, and cultural influence. But now, every part of that public legacy was being examined under an intense spotlight. The courtroom had become the place where those competing narratives collided. One side presented allegations and testimony. The other challenged them. And ultimately, the legal process, not social media, not headlines, and not public opinion, would determine what could actually be established. As another tense day of proceedings came to an end, one image remained impossible to ignore. Diddy seated at the defense table while attorneys, witnesses, reporters, and spectators watched the case unfold around him. The man who had spent decades surrounded by power and influence was now facing a moment where none of those things could simply make the allegations disappear. And whatever the final outcome,